Welcome to Greek for a Week. I'm glad that you are continuing our study with us in the book of 1 Peter. We are looking at chapter 3, verses 8 through 12. So here's our paragraph, and we are looking at the last two verses of this paragraph. And then, of course, that means next week we will be diagramming all of verses 8 through 12. So we have here in front of us two verses that will incorporate several imperatives that Peter is using, again, to encourage this concept of unity and love. So let's translate, and then we'll make note of a couple of things. So, but he must stay away from evil and do good. He must seek peace and pursue it, because the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears to their prayers. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. So let's look at a couple of things, because I think it might be helpful just to see, again, what Peter's intention might be here. So you have de, all right? That is a conjunction here, really, that is providing the next step in the argument. So here he's providing verse 11, again, next step in the argument from verse 10. But now we have a shift in emphasis from the sins of speech, the preceding verse, again, to just general sins. Then you can see we have the ekklinato. Here is a third person singular. Again, aorist active imperative from ekklino. And what's interesting here is, remember, you have your imperatival ending of sato. Well, what happens is this sigma runs up against this last letter in the stem, which is a nu. Well, recall that is a what? That is a liquid verb. So when it's a liquid verb and it ends in a liquid consonant, lambda, mu, nu, or rho, this case it's a nu. When that sigma runs up against that nu, the sigma drops out and the nu, or that liquid consonant, stays there. Then I also have here the poi sato. So here is another imperative. What's interesting, when this sigma of sato gets attached, remember, poieo, there's usually an epsilon here. So when that epsilon is there and the sigma ending gets attached, you have a lengthened vowel, which is an eta. So that's the case here. Again, third person singular, aorist active imperative from poieo. You have a very similar vowel lengthening taking place here on zeteo. This normally is an epsilon in the lexical form, but it gets lengthened when the sato gets attached. And then finally, you have dioxato. So here is another example in which you have the lexical form is dioko. Well, here is a kappa, but when the sigma ending gets attached, the sigma and the kappa join together for a square of stops to give us the xi. So I thought that was neat to go over that, just to kind of review and see how some of these imperatival forms function, especially when they interact with the last letter of the stem. So here you have a liquid verb. Here you just have a vowel lengthening. You have a vowel lengthening here. And then here you have a square of stops when two consonants come together. Just some review. Then you have hati here in verse 12, which is a causal hati. That is providing the motivational grounds for the imperatives back in verse 11. Imperatives back in verse 11 is stay away from evil, do good, seek peace, and pursue it. Why? Because the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. So here you have the epi functioning in a sense of, you could translate this, are on the righteous. But I tend to agree with Dubas here in his Baylor Handbook series, where he says that really, though goal is the intention of these particular prepositions, the epi and especially the ace, here you might have a goal orientation. He also says that it could just simply be benefaction. In other words, we receive the benefit of the eyes of the Lord being on us and his ears basically attending to our prayers. And so that would be the case with epi and then even ace here. And then, of course, we have another de, which also brings us to another step in the argument. We're shifting from God's attitude toward the righteous. Then he's going to shift to those who practice or engage in evil doings or evil deeds. And that's this particular phrase here, which is why we have a de. Then you have the poi untas right here. This is a participle. I would contend a substantival participle, present active participle, masculine, accusative, plural of poieo, and which is why I translated against. Here we go, against those who do, substantival participle. All right, trust that's been helpful. A little bit of review there on some of the Greek verbs. Again, it's just neat to review that kind of stuff, just to kind of bring those rules back into our remembrance and see why a particular verb, especially spelled the way that it is. Again, so see you next week. We will diagram verses 8 through 12. Have a great week.